Get more reaction to the attack in Manchester now from the Green Party, which opens its autumn conference in Bournemouth this weekend. That's its first since Party Leader Zack Polanski was elected with an 84% mandate. He joins me now from Bournemouth. A very good morning to you. And I do want to start by getting your reaction to the attack on that Manchester synagogue. As I understand it, you grew up in the Jewish community in Manchester. So give us your reaction this morning.
Well, it's difficult to find any other reaction that's new other than saying this is a horrific attack. As you say, I'm a Jewish man who grew up. I went to a synagogue that was very close to this synagogue. I went to school close to this synagogue. So this is both personal for me and is political. I suppose my deep reflection on a day like this is the work that I'm proudest of as one of the 5 people in the last 100 years to be in a leadership position in British politics that is Jewish, is to say that I'm really proud of interfaith work, where I've come together with the Muslim community to say, actually, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And actually, the only authentic response is solidarity. We need community cohesion and we need people to stick together.
Have you been able to speak to anybody there? Give us an idea on what impact this will have had on the community in Manchester and the impact on Jewish people across the country.
Well, it's awful. We know for a long time that anti-Semitism has been on the rise. Again, I experienced that personally on social media, but we also know that there's members of the Orthodox community, both in Manchester and in London, who have had both verbal and physical attacks. I think it's about, ultimately, though, I think your last contributor in the last package was really right. This can't just be about more security. We can't just spend more money on weapons or people or build bigger walls. We ultimately need to have a conversation in this country about what does community cohesion look like. We know that the best work is when communities are invested in, when people eat together, they can pray together, they can gather together. And I think decades of both Conservative austerity and now Labour austerity is really causing some of these divisions in society. And actually, this is a moment to step back and look at how can the government, how can anyone in civil society play their part right now in unity rather than division.
Kemi Badenoch has linked some of the language around the war in Gaza. She says phrases like global intifada with creating a hostile atmosphere for Jewish people. The Greens have been outspoken in their support of Palestinians, but do you share those concerns about language?
No, I think Kemi Badenoch's been deeply irresponsible there. We need to not conflate the Jewish community and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And actually putting those two things together, I say personally as a Jewish person, makes me feel more at risk. I think you can both be absolutely clear that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in our country is totally unacceptable. And you can stand against the ongoing genocide and our government's complicity, in fact, active enabling by selling arms to Israel. Those are two different issues, but we can hold the nuance and complexity of recognising right is right and wrong is wrong, and we can say that clearly.
Well, while we talk about language, your deputy leader, Mohsin Ali, has been criticised for his response to the October the 7th attacks. He called it the end of white settler colonialism. He's since apologised, but is it appropriate to have him as your deputy leader?
Well, I think the key words there are he has apologised, and this was before he was deputy leader. What I would say more widely, though, is I'm a Jewish man who's feeling this genocide deeply. Every single day, the equivalent of a classroom of children are being slaughtered in Gaza. And so as a Muslim man, whilst I don't condone the language, I can understand why this is also an incredibly difficult time for many Muslim people, as it is for Jewish people. Ultimately, I think rather than trying to divide communities, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, I'm just saying more widely, rather than dividing communities, I think this is really a moment of reflection and actually going, how can we all take responsibility to make sure our language is nuanced, that it's sensitive, but also that we don't turn our eye from what's happening and we do what we can within our role in a democratic structure to do that. And that's why I'm so proud that today we're about to have our biggest Green Party conference in history. And the reason why I say that is I think the antidote to all of this is the ballot box. And I want to make sure that everyone in this country right now knows that my message from the Green Party is we will lower your bills, we will protect the National Health Service, and we will actually invest in communities. I think that's the antidote to so much of this toxicity.
Shabana Mahmood said that she was disappointed to see pro-Palestinian marches go ahead after the attack last night across the country. She said that she thought it was dishonourable. She said people could have just stepped back and given communities a day or two to grieve and process what had happened. Does she have a point, do you think?
No, I think Shabana Mahmood is also being deeply irresponsible. There's a lot of it about. I think ultimately conflating protests against a genocide in Gaza and ultimately weaponising that against an anti-Semitic attack on our streets, a terrorist attack, is deeply irresponsible. And again, democratic, non-violent protest is a cornerstone of our democracy. And I think it's worrying when government are increasingly trying to crush down dissent and again using what is a brutal attack that many of us in the Jewish community, in fact all of us in the Jewish community, are feeling very deeply, to try and use that to point at a protest and say people don't have a right to also speak out against the genocide is both conflating issues, it's incoherent, and it's exactly the opposite of what we need from politicians. We need statesmanship in this moment. We need responsibility. We need people to be sensitive about their language, but also recognise that there is complexity to this, and it can't just be about finger-pointing at people who are very worried about a genocide.
In practical terms, the Prime Minister has pledged extra security for synagogues and other places where Jewish people will gather. Do you feel enough is being done to protect people?
I think it can't just be about spending more money and investment. That's part of it. But actually, this country right now is having a conversation about patriotism. And I think that probably needs to be a deeper conversation than just waving flags. I think it has to be about why do some people not feel like they belong here? Why do they feel unwelcome? And actually, how can we make sure that everyone feels love for their community and loved from their community? Those are complex things, particularly when there are tensions in our communities. But we know when we get this right, this is what's part of what makes Britain great. Migration, multiculturalism is all really important part of being British. It also requires the work. And I think far too often the work is not done. Instead, there's just been angry words. Angry words are not going to get us anywhere. We need unity, we need complicated conversations, and we need to bring people together rather than divide.